Hello and welcome to Avashin podcast. In this podcast, we welcome guests who are waging a struggle. My name is Frederike Geerdink. I'm a journalist who writes and speaks about power structures and those who want to tear them down. This podcast is powered by Media News, which you can visit at medianews.net. Let me explain shortly why this podcast is called Avashin, which means blue water. Avashin is a region in the mountains of Kurdistan, where the river by the same name has its source. The Avashin is clear, blue and sparkling, and an inspiration in the Kurdish struggle for freedom. This is the first episode of Avashin podcast. I'm honored to welcome Mike Africa Jr. as my guest. Mike Africa Jr. is an activist, a writer, a stage performer, keynote speaker, and a hip-hop artist. And if I'm not mistaken, married and the father of 2 children? Father of 4 children. He is also the lead strategic organizer to Free Mumia Abu Jamal. Mumia Abu Jamal is an American political activist and journalist. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, he served as the president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. Mumia Abu Jamal has been imprisoned since 1982, when he was convicted for murdering a police officer. It was a crime he did not commit. He was on death row. The death penalty sentence was overturned in 2011. Ever since, he has been serving a life sentence without parole. He is widely known for his writings and commentary on the criminal justice system in the United States. Mumia Abu Jamal was 28 when he was convicted. He is 67 years old now. Welcome, Mike Africa Jr. Thank you so much for speaking to me. You're quite an experienced campaigner for people who are unjustly incarcerated. We will get to that extensively during our conversation. But first, maybe you could explain how your involvement in the campaign to free Mumia Abu Jamal started. What is, in other words, the source of your struggle?
Well, thank you, Frederike, for first of all having me on your podcast. And thank you for all of the people that are out there listening to what I have to say. The reason why I support freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal is simple. When my family was targeted by the Philadelphia government, the police, racist mayor Frank Rizzo, and criminal government, corrupt government, Mumia Abu Jamal was a journalist that was speaking out, that was basically covering the story of my family. And he told the truth. So I think that it's only right, it's only fair that in his time of need, I support him the way he supported my family.
And can you tell us more about when your family was attacked? When was that and what happened?
So my family was taking a stand against injustice in the 70s. My great uncle John Africa founded the MOVE organization, and the mission is to protect life, and people, animals, and the environment, and to encourage other people to protect life too. And so when John Africa would be talking to people about the injustice in the system and how the air is polluted, the water is polluted, life has been abused, and animals are used for slaves and circuses and zoos, and our family was under attack because these institutions that house these animals and that steal these animals from Africa and bring them over to Philadelphia to a zoo, they make money by doing this. And so those institutions and the circuses and the police, they attacked MOVE. And my parents were among 2 of those people. They attacked on August 8th, 1978. Hundreds of police officers came to our house, fire department, streets department, They raided the house. They shot at the people. And in the shooting, a cop was killed. And of course, they blamed the murder. The police blamed the murder of the cop on Move, on my parents. And during the time that Move was on trial, Mumia covered the trial, and he reported on the trial, and he reported on what was happening with the Move members. And, the city, the Frank Rizzos of the world, they didn't want Mumia to report that way. So he became a target too.
I watched the documentary film 40 Years a Prisoner, in which you are the lead character. Can you tell us shortly the story of what happened afterwards?
First of all, people out there should definitely check out 40 Years a Prisoner. It's on HBO Max right now, produced and directed by the amazing Tommy Oliver. It's a documentary that is executive produced by Common and John Legend and Questlove and Black Thought from The Roots. The film is award-winning film, and people, if you want to know the story and the history, some of the history of Move and my quest to free my parents, you should definitely check out 40 Years a Prisoner on HBO Max. So when my family was arrested in 1978, my mother was pregnant with me, 8 months pregnant, with almost 8 months. And I was born in a jail cell shortly after. And I didn't, obviously you're not born knowing what's going on in the world, right? But I was taught by Move members and my family, the history of my family and the struggle that they endured. And as I got older, and by older, I mean 13, 14 years old, I decided to get involved and try to help with them being in prison too. And took a long time to finally get there. But my work to bring the Move 9 home, to bring my parents home, was a long, long haul where we had to meet with a lot of people. We had to talk to people. We traveled the world. Myself and Ramona and Pam Africa and many supporters traveled the world, just trying to bring awareness to the issues and to make people aware of the Move organization itself. But also, we definitely talked a lot about the Move 9 and their struggle for freedom. They were people that were put in prison unjustly. And we just fought for them to get home.
And eventually your mother was freed in 2018 and your father last year.
No, so my mother was freed in 2018. My dad was freed 4 months later, 2018.
4 months later, yeah. I watched the documentary, and what struck me very much at the end, your father is speaking, and he explained that besides being happy to be free, he's also very relieved that his release also freed his son, you, of a big burden. And then I thought, I wondered what the title of the film, 40 Years a Prisoner, it refers not only to your parents and to the other people, the other 7 who were in jail, but also to yourself?
Yeah, that's what Tommy said. Tommy Oliver, when he asks that question sometimes, who do you think we're referring to when we say 40 years a prisoner? And he says that, we're talking about Mike too, listen, it wasn't an easy struggle. It's a struggle. It's called the struggle for a reason. I was born in jail. I grew up without my parents, and fortunately for me, I had a good community around me. I had my grandmother, I had Move members, I had Ramona Africa, I had Pam Africa. I had a lot of good people that supported me and helped me nurture me and to become the person that I am. And I also had my parents, even though they were in prison, they were a huge influence on me to be a good person, and they nurtured the goodness that I have in me. And but yeah, I mean, it was a long, hard thing. And for 40 years, we struggled and we worked, and we were denied appeal after appeal. At the end of the movie, you see this nice hug, and you see the everybody's, feeling good because this thing happened, and you see the welcome home from all of the community. But, we put so much effort. It's kind of like, how you see people on the internet, on Instagram, you see them with the muscles, and they're showing the muscles, and they're strong and they're big, and but you don't see all the work that it took to get into that. You don't see them, and with the ice on their body so that they can heal. You don't see them, with setbacks and sore shoulders, so they got to take a day off. It is a lot that goes into that final product, and there's a lot to maintain that product too. And, there were so many times when you think that the parole board is going to grant release for the Move 9, and they don't. There's so many times where they think that they gave a good interview to the parole board, and the parole board rejects them. For 10 years, they went up in front of parole board, and they were rejected every single time. So a lot.
And you get your hopes up every time again, and the hopes are shattered every time again.
Yeah, and you expect that this time might be different. So to actually finally see them come home was nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, because you've been struggling for their freedom since you were 13, right?
That's right.
And is that also at that young age that you were thinking of freeing Mumia Abu-Jamal already, or did that come later?
I don't think I've ever said free the Move 9 without saying free Mumia too.
Yeah.
When I started learning, you're not born knowing this information. Just because you were born into the family that this happened to, that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to know the information around it. You still have to be educated about it. So when Ramona would travel the world, and she would travel.
Can you explain who Ramona is?
Okay, so
you mentioned her name several times, so the listener needs to know.
So when the people were arrested, my parents and the other Move members were arrested in 78. There were other Move members that were still out on the street and not in prison, and they were protesting to free the Move 9. My parents and them, and Ramona was one of them. And when they were protesting so much that the government wanted to get rid of them and stop them from protesting, so what they did was the government flew a helicopter over our house, and they dropped a bomb on our house, and they killed 11 people. And Ramona Africa was the lone adult survivor of that bombing. And so after the bombing, she was arrested. She spent 7 years in prison. They charged her with riot and arson. They said she started the fire. So in 1992, when she came home from prison, she came and got me, and she got me on the move. And I traveled the country with her. We had plans to travel outside the country too, but I traveled her all around, and while she would be talking to these audiences, to these college students in lecture halls and these community activists, and she would be talking to them about the history of Move. And while they would be learning about the history, I would be learning about it too.
Can you tell us bit more about the MOVE organization and what it stands for and the ideology, and what I'm very much also interested in, because it's a movement that originates in the 1970s, or is it older?
I know that the above ground chapter of the organization started in the early 70s.
Yeah, so that's a long time. So I was wondering, from those days till now, did the ideology change in any way? Did the paradigm change? Or are the principles of those days still very much alive? Can you explain, and what that ideology and what the ideals were?
Yeah, so a lot has changed for sure. John Africa was the founder of the organization, and he was the breath of the organization. He was the one that breathed life into the people to teach them about protecting life and not hurting animals and saving and preserving in the environment. And since he was in the house May 13th when the bomb was dropped, and he was killed on May 13th, 1985. So since then, a lot has changed. People have strayed away from that original message. The belief system is still the same. That hasn't changed, but people don't follow it like they used to, because it was his belief. It was his religion. Mm-hmm. But there are those of us that still believe that, he was right for saying the system is wrong. There are those of us that believe that we still should fight against injustice. And there are those of us that still follow in the footsteps of pushing for freedom for people like Mumia, who talks about these injustices. There are very few MOVE members left, but there are those of us that continue to fight for justice, and I am one of them.
You've been campaigning for the freedom of your parents and others and Mumia since you were a teenager. And the first aim of the struggle was to get them free, and is to get other people free and to get Mumia released. But what is the bigger goal of that struggle? And has that changed over time? Like, I can imagine that it starts with getting people out of jail, but that it progresses into abolishing jails, for example. Is that kind of the progressive thinking that has been made, or has it taken another direction? Or,
I think that America needs an overhaul. There's a lot of injustice. There's a lot of things that could change, that need to change. The suffrage of people here is immense, is extreme. I think that America could probably learn some things from the way Germany has changed the societies there in terms of prison. People spend way too much time in prison in America. They don't need to spend 40 and 50 years in prison. People that, statistically, after the age of 55, you have a less than 1% recidivism rate. But America makes a lot of money off of keeping people in prison. As John Africa would say, prisons are modern day slavery. Mm-hmm. So I think that has to change. I think that the police kill people, and they need to stop killing people. I think that, there's a whole lot of racism in the country. And I think instead of talking about war and spreading this idea that war is to be glorified, I think we need to be talking more about peace and love. And I think that we should stop glorifying fighting and violence in this music. And I think we should be talking more about peace and love. So the fight is never ending. As long as the problem exists, we have to apply the solution.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking about. If Mumia Abu Jamal is released, that doesn't mean the struggle is over, is it?
No, it just means that the struggle to free Mumia is over.
Yeah.
But there's still a struggle to free Mutulu Shakur. There's still a struggle to free Sundiata Acoli. There's still a struggle to free Leonard Peltier. There's still a struggle to free a lot of people. Recently we've gotten a lot of people home, through the struggle. My parents came home after 40 years Other Move 9 members came home. Russell Maroon Schultz came home. David Gilbert came home. A lot of people came home, but there's still a lot of people in the prisons, you know. Mm-hmm. So I, as a revolutionary, I understand that, you know, prison is not the answer to crime. If prison is the answer to crime, then why is crime increasing? You know, prisons in Pennsylvania are called state correctional institutions. Yeah. But who is it correcting? And if it's not correcting people, then what is the point? And punishing people for what? You know, so we have to make some changes.
Yeah, especially because the people you've been fighting for specifically, your parents and the rest of the group and Mumia Abu-Jamal, they were not even guilty of what they were accused of. I wondered, last year, after the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter started, has freedom for Mumia Abu-Jamal been part of that conversation last year?
Absolutely. You know, whenever I get up to speak, especially during the George Floyd uprising in 2020, I carried a Mumia banner, a Mumia sign with me to make sure people know that we're not going to come to Philadelphia and talk about freedom for people and not talk about Mumia Abu-Jamal. Okay, that's my son. It's dinner time here.
Okay. Do you have a little bit more?
I have a couple more minutes, yeah.
Okay. Let me see. When Black Lives Matter started, was it for you like you have to try to keep momentum for the Free Mumia campaign, and then Black Lives Matter started? Is it like a strategy shift also now? Like we have to try to use this momentum of this movement to free him and to push the struggle for his freedom?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, you can't go into a meeting where people are talking about the death of Tamir Rice, you know, when his family is there to talk about the injustice of the killing of Tamir Rice. You can't go in there and start talking about, free Mumia, right? So you have to understand that, you know, when you're dealing with Sandra Bland's family, you know, she was murdered. Sandra Bland was killed under some seriously suspicious conditions. And, you know, you don't want to go in there and start talking about Free Mumia. What you want to do is you want to lend your support and network with those people. You can help them get justice for their families. And in turn, if they're willing, they can help support you in your mission to free Mumia. So it's really not about competing organizations. It's about networking with people and working together to build the movement and make it bigger and stronger.
I understood that the judicial struggle to get Mumia out of jail recently had a disappointing development. There was like maybe going to be a retrial, and then there wasn't. Can you explain a little bit about the stage that the judicial struggle is in now?
Yeah, you know, legally,
because for people it's so unbelievable also that so many years in prison, 40 years in prison, and you haven't even committed the crime. So
legally, we don't really. I don't really talk about the case legally and where it is much right now, because some things that people may see as disappointment may not be for me. With his case, it may not be for him. We have to allow the lawyers to handle that part of it, and they're doing their job. So we'll just leave that at that right now.
Yeah. Where do you get your hope from after 4 decades?
Where do I get my hope from?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't believe that anything is over until it's over. And, you know, I guess I'm a glass half full kind of person. I don't believe that you should ever give up. Anything that's worth fighting for is worth fighting for until you achieve your goal. And if Mumia is not free and he still has breath in his body, I think that we should work to free him. So there is no opportunity or possibility to lose hope. You just keep on working.
Your parents, Debbie Africa and Mike Africa Sr., are free now. And how are they doing? And how is life on the outside now?
Life, they're happy they're home. They're happy to be free. And it's like, it's still new to me. I'll tell you a little story. When my mom came home from prison, I built a chest, a hope chest that we store blankets in. And every night, I would sit on that chest, and that chest is just outside her door, her bedroom door, and it's just to the right of our bathroom door. So, I would sit on that, and she would come out and she would sit next to me, and we would talk for hours and hours. Sometimes we start talking at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and we don't finish talking until the sun is coming up and it's time for me to go to work. Wow. And one night she came out of her bedroom, and I looked down and I recognized that she didn't have any shoes on. And I looked at her feet and I realized that I did not recognize them. It was the first time I'd ever seen them. I'd never seen them before. And I told my friend Bobby about it. And Bobby said, wow. He said, you're learning about your mother at the age of 40, things that babies know about their mothers. And that's how it is. I'm learning a lot of things about her and about my dad too, things that I never knew. I never saw them in street clothes before. I never saw them in a pair of shorts to see their legs. I never saw them get angry about things really, because when you visit them in prison, they want to have a good experience. So they're always on their best behavior, but then when they come home and they get a chance to relax a little bit and they can say how they feel about things really, and you catch them in the moment, and they don't have to, they don't have to be guarded. They just say how they feel. And that has really been refreshing for me to see. So it's been a joy to see them home, to be home with them, to see them flourish. They've been home for just 3 years, but they already have their own apartment. They already have their own cars, their own jobs, their own money, and they're thriving. And I applaud them for that. I'm really impressed with the level of intent and interest to succeed that they have within them. It's very, very fascinating.
The resilience. Wow. Yeah. And you get to see the whole persons for the first time.
The whole person. That's right.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much, Mike Africa Jr., for being my guest. May you be successful.
Thank you, Frederike.
Thank you very much. Thank you again.
Thank you, Frederike.
Take care.
All right. Good night.
You have been listening to Avasheen Podcast, powered by Media News. Your host was Frederike Geerdink. The music you heard was composed and performed by Ulash Yashil. I would highly appreciate it if you shared this podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you hang out online, so more people can find it. Thank you in advance, and until the next episode of Avasheen Podcast.